This is God's word. To the choir master, to Jeduthun, a psalm of David. I said, I will guard my ways, that I may not sin with my tongue. I will guard my mouth with a muzzle, so long as the wicked are in my presence. I was mute and silent. I held my peace to no avail, and my distress grew worse. My heart became hot within me. As I mused, the fire burned. Then I spoke with my tongue. O Lord, make me know my end and what is the measure of my days. Let me know how fleeting I am. Behold, you have made my days a few handbreadths, and my lifetime is as nothing before you. Surely all mankind stands as a mere breath. Surely a man goes about as a shadow. Surely for nothing they are in turmoil. Man heaps up wealth and does not know who will gather. And now, O Lord, for what do I wait? My hope is in you. Deliver me from all my transgressions. Do not make me the scorn of the fool. I am mute, I do not open my mouth, for it is you who have done it. Remove your stroke from me. I am spent by the hostility of your hand. When you discipline a man with rebukes for sin, you consume like a moth what is dear to him. Surely all mankind is a mere breath. Hear my prayer, O Lord, and give ear to my cry. Hold not your peace at my tears, for I am a sojourner with you, a guest like all my fathers. Look away from me, that I may smile again before I depart and am no more. I will note the intro, the heading of this psalm here to the choir master, Jeduthun. Jeduthun is a man, along with Asaph and Heman, who were musicians, appointed by David to lead public worship. You can read of this in 1 Chronicles 16, I believe 2 Chronicles 5 as well, and some other place in 1 Chronicles as well. His name appears in the titles of Psalm 62 and 77, so we have that same sort of title in three psalms in the Psalter. And it's just a reminder to us, as we've noted in the past, that just as this Psalter is the prayer book, as we have said, of the Bible, so also it is the song book of the Bible. It is, all of these psalms would have been played to music. And so to sing to the Lord is to pray to the Lord. And it's worth remembering and worth going over again to see how that might revolutionize your understanding of corporate worship and corporate singing on Sunday. The idea that when you're singing on Sunday, you're singing to the Lord, and what you're doing is you're praying to the Lord. One of the things I recommend, you should, if you don't get it, get the order of worship on Friday night. My general practice, what I try to do is actually not sing all the hymns that we'll be singing, but read them and read the content of them, kind of sink them into my heart and into my mind so that when I do sing them, I'm actually thinking through what I'm praying to the Lord, what I'm singing to the Lord. So I think that's I think that can be a revolutionary kind of understanding of singing. It was for me, this idea that I struggle to pray, I struggle to know how to pray, and here I get to sing to the Lord and pray to the Lord. The psalm here ultimately is about the brevity of life. And it is looking at the brevity of life and the fleeting nature of life, David ultimately orients his heart in the right direction toward eternity, toward God who is eternal. And that's where we'll be going. That's what we'll be seeing here this evening. And this psalm can really be broken down neatly into four sections. First section, verse 1 through 3, guarding the tongue. Second section, verse 4 through 6, the fleeting life. Third section, verse 7 through 11, hope in God. And then the fourth section, verse 12 through 13, a sojourner with God. So that's where we'll be going this evening. First, verses 1 through 3, guarding the tongue. These three verses appear to be about David guarding his tongue in the presence of the wicked, in the presence of evil doers. His heart is burning within him. He's suffering, it seems, under the heavy hand of God's discipline and even judgment. I think it's fitting that this psalm follows on the heels of Psalm 38, which we looked at last week. Psalm 38:16, as David is feeling the weight of God's discipline for his sin, he says, "Only let them," that is the wicked, his enemies, "not rejoice over me, who boast against me when my foot slips." The wicked surround the righteous in their suffering and are essentially saying, "Where is your God now?" so to speak. And David, his heart is burning within him, and he's wanting to maybe lash out at the wicked in his anger, or perhaps there's anger as we see throughout the rest of the psalm. He's questioning God and the heavy hand of God upon him. Perhaps there's sort of an anger, a bitterness perhaps toward God. And what David doesn't want to do is open his mouth and soil the name of his Lord before the enemy. And I think herein lies an important subject that we can often forget: how we suffer and how we face the trials that the Lord places upon us before the eyes of the unbelieving, wicked world. There's a responsibility on us. And it's going to say something about the God we serve and the way we suffer before the world. Romans 2:24, Paul quoting from Isaiah 52, speaking of the Jews and condemning the Jews of his day, saying, "You cause the Gentiles to blaspheme my name." The way they present God before the face of the wicked, unbelieving nations and world is causing them to blaspheme the name of God. And I think it's something worth remembering. In the midst of our suffering, we have a responsibility before the watching world to continue to hold high the honor and dignity of the God that we serve. Think about for a moment if you have an unbelieving friend and you're teaching your unbelieving friend all the time about the love of Jesus, the wonders of Jesus, and the wonders of God, and then that unbelieving friend gets to witness you when a certain kind of suffering and trial comes onto your life, and what do they get to see? They see you become this cantankerous person, filled with bitterness and anger and no hope in the world and the way you carry yourself. Is that going to draw your unbelieving friend more into the gospel, into Christ? No, it's probably going to distance them from the Lord. And they're going to say what? They're going to say, "Oh, it looks like Christianity is just like any other religion." The way we suffer is really actually one of the greatest ways and greatest witnesses to the watching world. As we suffer through our trials and our sufferings with hope and even with joy, it's a great witness to the world. As Tertullian said, the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. How the church suffered was the way the church spread in the first 4 centuries, and it is still the same today. So we have a responsibility to hold high the honor and dignity of God in the midst of our trials and our suffering before a watching world. Second, verse 4 through 6, fleeting life. Verse 4, David asks for God to make him know my end. Let me know how fleeting my life is. Verse 5, the word that we get for breath is the same Hebrew word that we get throughout the book of Ecclesiastes, which of course we've been going through in the evening sermon series, for that word vanity of vanities. Life is vain. Life is meaningless. Life is a vapor. Life is a breath. Vanity of vanities. Life is mist and fleeting. We could maybe even say Ecclesiastes is the answer to David's prayer. Notice what David asks in verse 4, "Make me know my end. Let me know how fleeting I am." What is really all 12 chapters of Ecclesiastes doing as we're witnessing on Sunday evening? It's making you know that your life is but a breath. And that's what David wants. Notice that. He wants that. He wants to be reminded of it because it will make him wise, because it will give him good and right and true perspective. J. Stewart Perone expresses David's prayer in this way: "Make me rightly to know and estimate the shortness and uncertainty of human life, that so, instead of suffering myself to be perplexed with all that I see around me, I may cast myself the more entirely upon thee." And that's really what we get in verse 7. Verse 7 is really the hinge that turns the whole Psalter around. As he says in verse 7, my hope is in you. As he knows the fleeting nature of his life, as he gets a vision of the fact, as we will see in Psalm 90, how we are to number our days, it causes him to throw himself more into his eternal God, who we have been made for. Third, verse 7 through 11, hope in God. In this section, we see perhaps a perplexity on David's part concerning his current state. There's such a similarity to Job, specifically Job 7 here, that I think it would be worth our while to turn there. Go ahead and keep your finger in Psalm 39 and turn with me to Job 7, 17 through 21. And I think Job really captures what David is dealing with and the difficulties and sort of his confusion in the state of God's heavy hand against him. Job 7, verse 17 through 21. Job, of course, is the book right before Psalms. So Job 7, verse 17 through 21. What is man that you make so much of him, and that you set your heart on him? Visit him every morning and test him every moment. How long will you not look away from me, nor leave me alone till I swallow my spit? If I sin, what do I do to you, you watcher of mankind? Why have you made me your mark? Why have I become a burden to you? Why do you not pardon my transgression and take away my iniquity? For now I shall lie in the earth, but you shall seek me, but I shall not be. And it's this kind of perplexity that is captured there in Job that I think David is dealing with. The idea of, I'm just a small little speck on the radar. I'm a finite little creature. You're the eternal God of the heavens and earth. What do you care about me so much that you're casting all this pain upon my life? Just take your hand away from me. What am I to you, the great and almighty sovereign God? Why is this happening to me? What do you want from me? But you see, the irony of it all is that the eternal God cares for us so much that he does discipline us. Because our hearts have been made for eternity, they've been made for God. So that the heavy discipline, rather than showing God as cruel, treating us like a despot maybe treats his miserable slaves under his thumb, it's actually evidence of the dignity of man as the image of God who has been made for God and for eternity is being disciplined when they go away from the precepts, the testimonies, and the truth of God. It's a sign of God's love that he disciplines, and it's sort of the irony of it all. Why are you throwing such a heavy hand upon me? Are you cruel? No, actually, it actually says the opposite. That's how much he cares about mankind, the crown of his creation, the image bearers. As David said in Psalm 8, in a different sort of spirit, in wonder of God making man yet a little lower than the angels, giving him dominion over all the world. And his discipline, as Hebrews 12 tells us, is his evidence that he is our Father that has adopted us and is treating us like his children. Note well that David's sorrow and perhaps even confusion here is following verse 7, my hope is in you. He is expressing sorrow as he does in verse 4 through 6, but now, if you will, with a godly vision. It's the cry of one whose eye, if you will, is squarely on God. Think about it. If I punish my child for his sin and his disobedience, and my child looks up to me with tears strolling down his eyes, and he says, Daddy, why do you punish me like this? I'm not going to punish him more for asking the question. What's it actually going to do? It's actually going to draw me more to my son, and I will say to him, because I love you. The heavy hand of God upon us does not mean that we like self-flagellation. We're just simply saying, yeah, God, you're sovereign. This is all in your planning and timing. I love this. I got to be honest with you. If one of my sons said that to me, I'd say, okay, what do you want out of this? You want a treat? Like, really? You love this? It's painful. And a relationship between the Father and the Son sometimes has that kind of back and forth. Lord, why are you placing this heavy hand upon me? And it's that give and take of that covenant relationship that God binds to his people that he invites us into. Think of Moses. Lord, what will it say about your name if you destroy this people? I mean, he is bold before the face of God. And what are we are told about Moses and his relationship with God? He spoke to him face to face like a friend. That's how friends often speak, isn't it? You're not questioning his goodness. You're not questioning his sovereign providential care over you. But you are expressing your true emotions to the Father who has his open ear to you and to answer you in your time of need. Fourth and finally, verse 12 through 13, a sojourner with God. I want to deal with verse 13 and then finish with verse 12. Verse 13, look away from me that I may smile again before I depart and am no more. Job 10, verse 20 through 21, again we see a similarity. Turn away from me so I can have a moment's joy before I go to the place of no return, to the land of gloom and deep shadow. Now, I don't think we are to take these words as David, or even Job for that matter, saying, I want you out of my life, God. Turn away from me and leave me and abandon me and leave me to myself so that I can enjoy this life. I think it's rather turn your face that is a face of wrath toward me and turn your face now toward me that blesses me and comforts me. We think, of course, of the famous benediction in Numbers 6. Turn your face toward me and be gracious to me. Shine your countenance upon me and give me peace. So I think it's a call of the Lord's face being turned toward David in wrath. And David is saying, turn your face of wrath away from me and shine your countenance, your face upon me that is gracious and brings peace. Now verse 12, and we'll close with verse 12. Hear my prayer, O Lord, and give ear to my cry. Hold not your peace at my tears, for I am a sojourner with you, a guest like all my fathers. Now the word for sojourner and guest, or can also be translated stranger, was a term or terms for foreign residents in Israel. They were to be made welcome, certainly, by the natives in the land, but could not own any land. They were not permanent residents. They were pilgrims. And here, note it, David, with his feet planted in the promised land as king over Israel, yet what still happens in the promised land? You die. Life is still a mere breath in the promised land. David in the promised land is still a mere breath, and his chief desire is God who is eternal. And it's interesting that he says, I'm a guest like all my fathers. Fathers there referring to the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Genesis 23, verse 4, Abraham says to the Hittites, with his feet solidly in the promised land, I am a sojourner and a stranger among you. Hebrews 11:13, these all died in faith, not having received the things promised, but having seen them and greeted them from afar, and having acknowledged that they were strangers and exiles on, now catch it, on the earth, on the place where death reigns, in the place where we still go back to the dust, the earth. But notice also David says, I'm a sojourner with you. Almost as though to say, God is a sojourner with David in this world where death reigns. Think about God's response to David in 2 Samuel 7 when David wants God to build God a temple, a house. And God says in 2 Samuel 7, verse 6 through 7, have I not lived in a house? I have not lived in a house since the day I brought up the people of Israel from Egypt to this day. But I have been moving, sojourning, about in a tent for my dwelling. In all places where I have moved and sojourned with all the people of Israel, did I speak a word with any of the judges of Israel, whom I commanded to shepherd my people Israel, saying, why have you not built me a house? God is a sojourner with his people. He pitches a tent with his people in this dying world where death reigns and we go back to the dust. And in John 1:14 in the Greek, it quite literally says that Christ, the Word, tabernacles with us. He pitches his tent with us. And then before he ascends into heaven, he says in Matthew 28, behold, I am with you until the end of the age. Christ sojourns with us as pilgrims and exiles on this earth as we trek toward the heavenly country that he is currently seated in and has won for us. And you see, this is the conclusion of considering what David has considered in Psalm 39, that life is a mere breath. I wasn't made for this world. I was made for the world to come where eternity and God reigns. And that's what should be our conclusion as we consider the fleeting nature of our existence, as we sit at a funeral. It's what we are to contemplate, that we are not made for this world where death reigns, but we are made for the world where God reigns and where eternal life rests. All right, let's go into our time of prayer now. Gary, I understand you have some prayer requests.
Bob's sister, about to call that sister.
Yeah.